Winning an argument against a genius is hard, winning an argument against an idiot is impossible. How did you learn this the hard way? Once worked with a guy who, by his own admission, would only pick arguments to get his jollies. Dude once tried to pick a fight over the weather forecast. Nice day. ISN? Yeah. Well, my app says 60% chance of showers. What the are you doing? Saying it's a nice day. When it's going to rain. Relax. Dude. I was just making conversation. Oh. So now you're trying to change the subject because I've confronted you with the truth. I just stopped talking to him. I manage a pizza restaurant and one day this customer came in wanting to return a pizza for a refund. Insisting he ate less than 2 slices. There are 8 slices on a pizza here and he had 3.5 slices left. So obviously he had way more than 2 slices. And I had a really strict manager and refund policy at the time, so there was absolutely nothing I could do for him. He kept arguing with me saying he only ate 2 slices when I had the pizza right in front of me, and I kept telling him that there are 8 slices to a pizza. We went back and forth for a while with him insisting that I didn't know how to count. I've been here for 3 years. I know how many slices we cut our pizzas into. But he wasn't having any of it. I never won the argument. Eventually he just got so aggressive and violent the police had to be called. If you have ever worked a retail or customer service job, you learn that on day 1. By day 7 you will wish torture was legal. So, this is only partially my story. I was sitting at a train station after visiting my sister at her university when this woman comes up to me and starts telling me about how she hates cell phones and how she can feel the cell phone signals going through her brain when people are making a call and how it gives her headaches. She went on and on about how she didn't have this problem before cell phone and that there were more and more cell phones these days bothering her. She was adamant that cell phones be banned in public spaces. I answered with something along the lines of, yep. There are more cell phones around now. She stood there kind of waiting for me to say something else. But the train came and we both got on it. On the train, there was some guy taking a very loud call. The woman walks up to him and starts telling him that the cell phone signals are hurting her. He starts arguing with her that that's nonsense. 2 minutes later they are in a full-on screaming match. I just stood quietly by and was grateful that I had the sense not to argue with her. I had my tubes removed at 22. Some guy tried to tell me that meant I was actually trans and was pretending to be a man. Because no reproductive ability equals not being a real woman. Obviously. He wouldn't listen that I simply didn't want children and I was very much still a woman. I do a lot of writing on r out of the loop. My whole shtick is long. Very detailed. Well-sourced comments that dive into the context behind the story rather than just giving a surface answer. These usually take me between 1 and 5 hours to write up fully. Depending on just how in-depth I go. Every single time one of them takes off, my inbox becomes a veritable shitstorm. You can't teach people who don't want to learn. And even if you could. If you've got 4 or 6 or 8 threads where people are putting up misinformation that sounds plausible but is actually wrong, it's really difficult to answer it all in any sort of timely fashion. Discussing in the comment section of political subreddits. Talking to my stepfather about literally anything but most specifically cars. I drive a 2012 Dodge Avenger and anytime anything happens to my car that needs a repair. Even maintenance like brakes, wheel speed sensors, little dumb stuff. He goes on about how it's 'cause I pay for an overpriced shitbox. The car has been pretty reliable for me, and I've obviously had to pay for things over the years, but nothing big that shouldn't have happened. Just the other day I paid $1,000 for a rear axle brake job including calipers, and he went on a rant about how if I drove a Ford it would be so much cheaper. Back in his day blah blah blah. He doesn't even own a car. And hasn't for 10 years cause he doesn't like driving sober. Sorry for the rant. Just irritated and annoyed of having my car attacked when I personally like it. I don't usually argue, but my parents are always confronting me with the term smart and all that. They are, especially my dad, stubborn and people without knowledge of anything. He can discuss of everything even if he doesn't know even about it. He starts calm and then starts shouting in a few seconds. I corrected a study PETA showed on Twitter about the amount of fecal matter found in meat, saying that this new law Trump made now proves there's poop in the meat you eat. I stated that almost all food has small traces of it, vegetables included. The FDA allows a certain percentage of fecal matter as well as bug particles in almost everything, such as chocolate. For example, the average chocolate bar contains 8 insect parts. Anything less than 60 insect pieces per 100 grams of chocolate, 2 chocolate bars worth, is deemed safe for consumption by the Food and Drug Administration. It's important to also wash vegetables and fruits before consuming them because traces of E. coli, which is found in feces, can be traced into the dirt it's grown in. Not just the dirt, but water used for irrigation, organic fertilizers, or droppings from birds and other animals that go into fields. This was brought up to attention after an outbreak occurred in the UK where several people caught it. I got blocked for hate speech. I'm a teacher. I get to deal with this every single day. I worked retail. Just get into a why conversation with any 5-year-old. It'll set you straight on what you think you know real quick. Me and my friend tried to explain to a kid in our class that anime isn't evil. He wouldn't listen. And his only explanation for his belief is, my mom looked it up and said it's demonic. So I'm right. We told him his sister is obsessed with Pokémon. And he said he was gonna get her in trouble. Never argue with an idiot. My mom is a Karen, so I tried to convince her that COVID exists and she kept saying the same things. Same with the 5 grams thing. I can't just handle it anymore. Sometimes she says, oh look at there. A very brilliant person who think that 5 grams radiations won't cause COVID. I just asked her how does she thinks radiations works and she replied, I don't. And you? Seems like you think you are the smartest person here. I gave up. And go in my room. Everyone in the house just hopes that she won't talk about this with me around because of the fact that I'll stuck myself in my room and will not play cards or Monopoly with them, since it's the only thing they thinks they can do in quarantine. There was a guy in one of my classes who always instigated arguments with people for the sake of an argument. He would knowingly say things to annoy people or goad them into arguing with him. I'm ashamed to say I was one of them for a time. One day, I remember we were having a class discussion about something, I don't even remember what. Honestly. And after I said something, he did what he always did and said something incorrect for the sake of making an argument pop up. He looked at me so smugly, just waiting for me to respond. And in that moment, I saw the playback reel of every time he pulled this and how it ended. It didn't matter how constructed our arguments were or how many sources we had, because he would always find a way to make it seem like he won the argument. He'd change the subject at random, talk over people, or just repeat what we were saying, then say it differently to make it seem like it was his idea. So, I looked at him and just said, okay. Then I continued on with the discussion. He was visibly startled. He tried to start back up again. But he didn't have a platform to launch off of because I never gave him one. By the time he was ready to say something, the topic had already changed and we had all moved on. He spent the rest of the class period sulking. Anytime he tried to pull that on me again, I'd do the same thing and it would frustrate him every time because I never gave in. I learned in that moment that people who do that are weeds. And the best way to get rid of them is to let them die in the desert of your indifference. I only think true things. After giving some arguments to prove that what a friend was saying was false. Went to high school. I was arguing with a classmate about a topic in biology. I argued with her until she said, "Dude, you're being too logical." Some guy tried to convince me that if ice melted it would weigh less. My inbox was just destroyed. He just tried to tell me that overall because water is light and ice is heavy that means it weighs less. Never learned that because I've never lost an argument. Oh. The time he proved me wrong. I accepted the new information, apologized and moved on. The time I proved him wrong, he blocked me. The worst is geniuses who are idiots. My brother is a very smart person who has decided to use every intellectual tool available to him in order to justify his racist and deeply misogynist beliefs. With one hand he holds up debunked pseudoscience and with the other he attacks everything you know and sows doubt. When he can't keep his opponent on the defensive and they start to question his evidence, he just shuts down. But until that point, he will use good intentions and notions of goodness against you. He will try to win the war through mental domination instead of really debating on any objective level. He shouts from a pulpit but professes no religion. Nothing is sacred. Nothing really matters. Except winning. Because he feels he is under siege every minute of every day. To win is to survive. It's inspiring to see someone struggle to change the world instead of letting it change him. But at some point he made the decision to divorce himself from pro-social values because he became so alienated from other humans that he stopped valuing humanity. He wants to see himself as post-human. But I know that he is just a man like many others who reinterpreted ostracism as apotheosis in order to preserve his ego. In the same vein, I live by the best part about beating your head against the wall is that it feels so good when you stop. Me and my buddies were stopping a fight between two people and the teacher, though we were all fighting each other and we all got detention. We tried to tell her that we were trying to stop the fight but she won't listen and still got the detention. Tried debating audiophiles on their claims. Never again. Never in my time online I've seen a community that can't even explain without uncalled for hostility. Saw a guy getting called retarded for saying why planar headphones are better. Reddit anti-vaxxer argument. When my mom said maybe the anti-vaxxers are right, I don't take her seriously anymore. A woman I met said video games made you a Nazi terrorist and I said no, cause I'm a gamer with straight A's. Lots of friends. And in good physical shape. She just said the video games rotted your brain so you can understand my argument. I'm going to pray for your soul. Inhales. There are far too many people like this in this world. Trying to convince a former roommate that the moving dot in the night sky was a satellite and not a UFO. Literally gave him a mini TED Talk on the near impossibility of a hypothetical UFO being in our sky. And the overwhelmingly more likely scenario that it was one of the umpteen man-made objects we've put into orbit. His response was, but there's still a chance it could be aliens. You don't know. The chance is so close to zero. It might as well be 0 inches. But it's not zero. That light was an alien. Quote. Sweet Jesus. So I was playing Xbox with a few friends. Now to be clear, we are all knuckleheads. Anyway, we are talking about the UFO stuff that's been happening recently. My stance was, well, there has always been UFO, it just stands for unidentified flying object. So if I throw a brick and it hits you in the face before you identify it, then it was a UFO. But my friend then proceeds to talk for 20 minutes about how UFO only talks about aliens. In which I say that the UFO has nothing to do with aliens. This argument went on for about an hour before I just gave up. During my second-year calculus class, one got really lost on one topic and went to the professor for help. I explained my reasoning. And what I did. He took a look and started making notes, looking more and more concerned as he went. Eventually he said, "Aha. You made 2 mistakes that coincidentally cancelled out. Thank God. For a second there I thought I was going to have to co-author a paper with you." I love the fact that he teaches math at the university level and for 1 second believed that some dumbass undergrad had discovered something unknown to math. That is why he is a genius and one of my favorite all-time professors. He does not believe he is infallible. Unlike idiots who can't believe they are wrong. Haven't had an argument against a genius unless you count my mom. But there's this one kid in band who I know who thinks wind is created from when trees are shaking and that submarines are always sinking. I tried to explain buoyancy to him and explain the wing thing to him, but I gave up after a while because he just wouldn't hear it. He's a nice kid though. My mother-in-law. When presented with literal facts, she says, "I just don't believe that." When a guy said, "I can't understanding your reasoning. You're putting the horse in front of the cart," I simply said, "Exactly," and let it go at that. By commenting on social media, especially Reddit. One of my friends was singing the Minion song, Banana. And I told him that they ripped it off from the Beach Boys and he looked at me and said, I'm pretty sure you're wrong. It's the movie that created the song." Literally showed him the song Barbara Ann that was released in 1965 and he still wouldn't believe me. My 5th grade teacher was convinced that the light emitted by stars is actually the sunlight being reflected off of them. Before you ask. 1. He was not a flat-earthed. 2. This was in 2010. 3. Although this was in Africa, he still had access to the internet. Encyclopedias, TV and other sources of information that would tell him how stupid he is.